we're somewhere beneath the streets of London right now.
Yeah, in some sort of medieval torture chamber.
It was an overflow prison for women and children in the 1600s. How does it make you feel? Like, does it bring back a little memory of the film or the shooting process? Or?
Well, I mean, there's the feeling of incarceration down here, and being oppressed. I don't know, I'm attracted to it. It inspires me, it's evocative. You know, if someone unfairly throws you in a jail and locks you in a cage or incarcerates you in some way, whether it's metaphorical or a physical jail, it makes you want to get out. It makes you want to fight for your freedom. So I'm attracted to that.
Yes, and so it makes oppression very real as well, right?
Well, oppression is real, and it's around us every day, but it's insidious. We have, you know, really obvious forms of oppression, which we experience in everyday life. Not all of us, some of us to lesser and greater degrees, but any kind of discrimination or separation, judgment, injustice is going to make a person feel incarcerated or imprisoned. And that goes on every day, all day, and we do it to ourselves as well. We limit ourselves, we imprison ourselves with our thinking, with our narrow-minded thinking, whether it's towards our own personal point of view or the way we treat ourselves or the way we treat other people.
I like this idea that you're attracted to the fight. Have you always been attracted to the fight? When did that begin? When did the fight in you begin?
Well, the fight begins when you're a child, doesn't it? I grew up in Detroit, Pontiac, mostly black neighborhoods, and then during the race riots, our family moved to a suburb, a white suburb.
Do you remember that day?
Which day? With the houses burning?
Was the house burning?
There were houses burning, not my house,
right.
But there were houses burning on the street. I remember that. But I remember moving to a different environment and feeling out of place. That was the first time I felt out of place, because I also went to a school that was white, middle class. Suddenly I lived in a white, middle class suburb, and I suddenly became aware of the differences of people. And I just became aware of how conforming was important.
Right.
Being like everyone else was important. Dressing like everyone else was important. Having the same hairstyle, wearing the same makeup, dating the cool guy.
It was important to the people around you.
Yes.
Right.
And that was a new feeling, and I didn't understand it, and I didn't like it, and I didn't fit in, and that's when the fight started.
Wow.
And then I started to behave in what I thought was a nonconformist way, actually to provoke people and to make things more miserable for myself. I stopped shaving under my arms and my legs. I refused to wear makeup, and I refused to dress a certain way, and everyone made fun.
It was kind of punk rock, by the way.
It was, but I didn't understand what punk rock was then, and I didn't have a support system around me. So then I'd come home, you know, crying, and then my dad would say, "Well, what did you expect? You're going out of your way to be different, and people are making fun of you for being different, and so now you have to pay the piper."
Do you feel like that the world wasn't fair when you moved at that age? Do you feel like the world that you were looking around you suddenly, you know?
Yeah, but for lots of reasons. I mean, my mother died when I was young, and so right away I didn't think the world was fair, because who wants to grow up without a mother? So I already had a sense of life not being fair. But then having to move from my neighborhood, which I felt very comfortable in, to a safer neighborhood, which I didn't feel comfortable in. That also felt unfair. And my brothers having freedom to do whatever they wanted, and the girls in our family not being able to do what they wanted, that felt unfair. And the way that people treated you in my high school, if you were different, if you were fat or gay or hairy like me, that felt unfair. I don't know, it was a domino effect that ultimately catapulted me out of the world that I was in.
Were there people that you identified with at that time?
What I did have was role models of people that I looked up to. Some people were dead, I was a big fan of the artist Frida Kahlo, and I went to the Detroit Institute of Arts all the time, and I saw her paintings, and I knew her story, and I she certainly was a unique individual. She was a revolutionary. She was married to a misogynist, Diego Rivera, also a very fine painter, but I mean, she was trying to be successful as an artist during a time when there weren't a lot of women doing what she was doing. She inspired me. Her life story inspired me. She suffered a lot. She fought against all odds and succeeded in many ways. Then there was the dancer Martha Graham. You know, her and Isadora Duncan changed the world of dance by taking women out of point shoes and corsets and
freeing up expression, right?
Freeing the body. And she used a lot of Greek mythology in her work, and her work was very sexual, and she never married or had children, and she was considered, you know, a feminist and a revolutionary woman. And I was a dancer at the time, so I looked up to her. And I actually danced in her school and her dance company when I first moved to New York. So she was an inspiration. And finally, also I was very inspired by Anne Sexton. My sister and I were really into poetry, and she was a big influence on my life. Her poetry. First of all, she looked like my mother.
Wow.
And second of all, I thought her language and her ideas and her imagery was so bold and extraordinary, and her voice was so unique. She did end up committing suicide, but I think she fought against a lot of oppression and felt incarcerated by the world that she was in, the 50s.
Right.
She was married, she was a housewife, her husband was the writer, and she was meant to stay home and raise the children, and she started taking writing courses at a university, and everyone heard her voice and encouraged her to be who she was. And then, of course, her home life was not encouraging her, and I think she felt imprisoned. But I loved what came out of that feeling. So if I could say 3 people influenced me and said, get out of here.
Right.
There's that bigger life waiting for you,
Yeah.
and there's a place where you're going to feel more comfortable. It would be those 3 women.
So the fight was born early, and there were role models that, you know, helped you to see that the possibility of a new life, a life directed by yourself.
Yes, and they were all artists.
They were all artists, and one was a dancer, which is very important. This film of yours has made me rethink your dancing.
My relationship to dance.
Yeah, throughout your career, because it figures so prominently in this film. But so let's just fast forward to recently.
Okay.
And I would love to know, like, what was this absolute moment that you wanted to make this statement, and you wanted to make something that it's not a music video, it's not in support of
A product
or your career as we know it, but it's like an honest statement of how you see the world and your role in it.
Right. Well, I can't say the exact moment I wanted to make the film, but I can tell you that there were moments along the way that started to make me feel that I needed to make a statement, that I needed to say something about what I was witnessing. I think it started very specifically when my tour started. On this last tour, I started to notice things, and it was an amalgamation and an overabundance of things that were not nice, things that were not good, things that were signs that I felt like I should be paying attention to. The first concert we had was in Tel Aviv, and before we even arrived, there was the threat of war, of Israel bombing Iran, and that was a very real threat. And was the concert going to get canceled or wasn't? Should we start the tour there? Should we not? You know, it was.
What did you end up deciding?
I said, we're going, we're definitely going. You know, the threat of war is not keeping me out of a country. Actually, it's an invitation. So
the fight.
Exactly, the fight. It's a reoccurring theme. And then, of course, one had to examine what was going on in Iran, and it's frightening what's going on in Iran. A large part of my fan base is gay, and it's a crime punishable by death to be gay in Iran. And so that was something that was going through my mind, and you know, what can I do about this?
Do you have fans in Iran that have reached out to you?
Yes.
What's that like? Do you engage with them?
I don't engage with them personally, but I read what they have to say, and you know, I read what a lot of my fans who are being put in prison for being gay, not just in Iran but around the world. It breaks my heart, and the idea that a person would be killed for who they love is it's something I can't, I could start crying if I think about it. So let's not go down that road. A lot of times I would do sound checks and I would talk to the fans and I would ask them questions. And when I was in Kiev, when I was in the Ukraine, some of the fans started talking to me about the former president being imprisoned, and a woman. And I said, well, why was she put in prison? And they said, because the current president doesn't like her. I said, is that the only reason? And they said, yes. And I said, that's absurd, that's insane, that's unfair, that's unjust, that's inhuman. Are you going to stand for that? Can't you all do something about it? And they said, no, we will be put in jail if we do anything about it. And that struck me. And I thought, wow, this, clearly isn't a democratic country. And let's go to Russia, because the Pussy Riot was on trial.
Right.
I was trying to decide whether I should go to the courthouse and start stage a protest or whatever. But I mean, that whole scenario was absurd too, that these three girls were put in this cage and put on this monkey trial, and for singing 30 seconds of a song that basically said that Putin was oppressing artists and women, and a hypocrite, and aligning himself with the church when he wasn't a man of God himself, or whatever. I mean, whatever they said, even if they called him the devil, they have to go to jail.
Yeah.
And the sentence was supposedly 7 years. This was also, once again, unfathomable to me, and I just couldn't believe it. And I was thinking, how can I be of service? What can I do? I talked about it on stage. I talked about the absurdity. I talked about, once again, this is, against humanity. This is against freedom of expression, the rights of an artist, the rights of a human being. I can't separate those two, by the way. This really disturbed me, that it was going on in the 21st century. This is not communist Russia anymore, right? The Cold War is over.
It's a different kind of Russia, but it's not.
It's a scary
right,
kind of Russia.
Russia.
It's continuingly
and
scary.
Did the government or authorities in Russia engage with you, or are they
I believe I
harassing
received a death threat, and then I went to St. Petersburg, and I was told that if anyone showed any outward signs of being gay at my concert, that they would be arrested.
And these were police in St. Petersburg?
Yes, and statements in the press, and I was told...
Did you go on the offense? Did you?
I went on stage and I spoke in defense of the gay community, and I spoke against the government for this absurd law or reaction or kind of discrimination. And I was told that there were 87 arrests made that evening, and I was also sued for $1 million for making that statement.
87 arrests at the concert?
Or people coming into the concert
like,
that evening,
milling
in
about,
or around.
Yeah, in and around. To jail for being...
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, so...
And you were sued $1 million?
Yeah, yes. So then another situation occurred where I was in France, and in my concert I have a song called Nobody Knows Me, and it's a video piece, and it's about how we don't really take the time to get to know one another, and because we don't take the time to get to know one another, we make all our decisions based on fear. And when we make our decisions based on fear, that's when we give birth to any kind of phobia, bigotry, hatred, discrimination, intolerance. So there was a flash cut of Marie Le Pen. She had been running in the previous election. She and her father are very far right. One might call them fascists. I, in fact, would myself, and I believe I would be telling you the truth. I had, for one split second, a cutout of her face with a upside-down swastika on her forehead. That is a symbol of fascism, even though, ironically, it was once a symbol of unity in India that Hitler hijacked and turned into something else. But because I showed her face with that symbol, she also threatened to sue me. She'd heard about it at a concert previous, and she said, if you show this when you come to France, I will sue you. But I showed it anyways, because I thought, wait a minute, I'm an artist. I can say what I want to say. Freedom of expression, this is my fight,
Again,
okay?
The fight. It's the fight.
So that happened, and then I had a smaller show at a theater called the Olympia, which is one of my favorite theaters in the whole world. It's a place that Edith Piaf made famous and other French singers in the early part of the 20th century. And it's a beautiful, beautiful theater. And I started making this speech about fascism, about freedom of expression, about how ironic is it that artists, African Americans, used to escape America before the Civil Rights Movement to come to France,
right,
to
express
themselves,
yeah.
to be free, to be artists. And here we are, cut to how many years later? You're no longer welcome in France if you're Muslim, if you're Jewish, if you're anything but a white French person. And people started booing me when I said that.
Wow.
But it wasn't like the fans around me. It was coming right far in the back. Anyways, when the concert was over with, I found out some people threw beer bottles on the stage, and it wasn't like a big deal, but there was some people throwing things on stage and booing, and I found out from the video cameras and people reporting to me later that there was a group of skinheads who had infiltrated my concert, who were sent there by Marie Le Pen. And they were like Heil Hitlering in the back of my concert. So this is another, like, no way, like, are you kidding me? Like, what's going on?
Right.
So every night I had a tattoo, not every night, because it lasted several days. So after 3 days of vigorous scrubbing in the shower, I could change my tattoo to another statement I would want to make, or I would keep it if I wanted to continue to make that statement.
Okay.
Because at a certain point in the show, I stripped down to my underwear, and you could see the tattoo across my back. So the shooting of Malala was a big thing for me too.
Right.
A real big thing for me, that a girl would be shot for wanting to go to school.
Right.
That was her crime, that she wrote a blog about the importance of education for girls. That was another real bug up my ass, and that kept me going like crazy through the whole part of my European tour. You know, I spoke out a lot on her behalf and had her name tattooed on my back for a long time. So it got to the point where every time I was on stage, there was something going on in that city and I had to talk about it.
Right.
And implore the audience, my audience, because I'm imagining that people who come to my concerts are fairly open-minded individuals who don't think in a narrow-minded way, and imploring them to take my message out into the world of treating human beings with dignity and respect, no matter who they are, no matter what they believe in, no matter what their sexual preferences or their religious beliefs, et cetera, et cetera. So these things are all playing in my mind like a tape cassette over and over again. I'm going from city to city going, okay, this world is changing very rapidly, and maybe it's always been like this, but it's like time, space, and motion is like speeding everything up, and it's all coming. I feel like the walls were caving in on me. And so I was feeling not only that I was being oppressed or censored as an artist, but also as a human being, and also the rights of other human beings very visibly, whether you were gay or you were Muslim or whatever. And I couldn't not pay attention to it. I can't just get on stage and do my show and go back to my hotel room and, you know, have my cup of tea and go to bed. It just wasn't going to work for me.
But then that moment came when you decided that you wanted to do something.
I'm getting there. Don't rush me. Okay?
I won't.
Then I come to America. Okay?
Yeah.
It was pre-election. It was Romney versus Obama, and then of course you know, it looked kind of scary there for a minute. Didn't you think?
It definitely looked scary.
And
well, it depends what side you're on, but yes.
Well,
it looked like he was going to lose.
But even people like open-minded, liberal-minded people that I knew were thinking of voting for Romney, and I was like, are you kidding me? So then that was like the new part of my fight.
Right.
And then I realized, you know, while I was in America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, that I felt a lot of complacency.
With the freedoms people have? Or
yeah,
had?
and I didn't get this real feeling from people in the audiences that they were going to go out and vote, that they were going to take charge of their future, that they knew that they were in charge of their destiny, but they actually weren't going to do anything about it. So then that was a new fight. Like, okay, because now we have freedom, but no one's doing anything about it because they don't need to, because they don't feel inspired, because they are.
Do you think part of the problem is that a lot of your American audiences aren't as connected to those things that you describe seeing all over the world?
I think it's because when you can have whatever you want, you forget how lucky you are, and that you forget that it's not, you take it for granted, and you stop fighting for it, you stop caring about it. And so when elections come around, you're not inspired. It's those people are aware of it because they're living in an oppressive environment every day of their life. It's palpable.
And sometimes it is life.
It is life and death. If you're getting thrown in jail for holding a guy's hand, then you're going to be paying attention to gay rights. You know, if you're not allowed to vote for who you want to vote for, then you're going to care about democracy. Here I am saying I'm so lucky that I'm from this country, and if you lived in my country, and then I'm in my country, and no one's doing anything about anything. And I'm getting booed on stages everywhere, not everywhere, but for instance, I was shocked when I got booed in New Orleans for having Obama's name on my back.
Really?
Yeah, of all places. And this happened a lot, surprisingly. I was expecting to get booed in Texas. Okay, that didn't surprise me. But I would say to people in the middle of my show, you know what? I don't care who you vote for, as long as you get out and vote for Obama. And I have a long pause.
Well, it did look really dark for him at that time. What do you think? Why? What went wrong for Obama? What went wrong? Why were people like
because
some
people
of
were
your
worried
liberal
about money. They were worried about the economy. They didn't think he handled, but he walked into a landmine. I mean, look at like what Bush left him, just debt, and so he couldn't do any of the things he wanted to do. He just had to fix the economy, and I think people were worried about the taxing situation. They thought his ideas were too. The rich people of the world, the higher income earning people of the world weren't a fan of his, and there was also a large group of people who didn't think that he was connected enough to Israel, and the American-Israeli connection wasn't strong enough. And why did I think he was getting a hard time? Because for those reasons, it was purely money and the economy, not the moral compass of the dude who's running for office.
Has it ever been an issue for you? The tax rate, the nominal tax rate in America. Have you ever made a decision in your life about?
Nobody wants to have their hard-earned money taken away from them.
Right.
I can assure you, I've been in some pretty crazy situations where people have taken my money or ripped me off or whatever, and it doesn't feel good. But if you look at the bigger picture for the good of the country, are you willing to make this sacrifice or this compromise because it's going to help people in the longer run? Then I'm going to be cool with that. I'm going to have to be cool with it. That's it. There is no other option. I don't want a warmonger for a president.
Right.
I don't care how much money he saves everybody.
Right.
Then what happened, which was really crazy, was that I said in one concert that, and it was a joke obviously, but a lot of people don't get my sense of humor. I think I was in Washington, D.C., and I said, it's crazy. You think about how Abraham Lincoln was the president of the United States, and he fought for abolishing slavery, and he was assassinated, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then we cut to the march in front of the White House with Martin Luther King, and he was fighting for equal rights for people of color, and he was assassinated. So then we cut to, I said, isn't it crazy that there is a black Muslim in the White House? And I got so much shit for saying that the next day from the Obama camp, because of course I know he's not a Muslim.
Right.
His father was or is or was or something. Do I care?
Right.
I don't care what religion he is. This, as you know, doesn't matter to me.
Right.
But the fact that they got so upset about it, the fact that they wrote me a letter, and the fact that Obama has to basically go around with his birth certificate pinned to his suit saying that he was baptized a Christian or that he is a Christian is a real big statement as far as I'm concerned about how America is not the land of the free and the home of the brave. And that really struck me. How crazy is that everyone got their knickers in a twist about this scenario? And it was another epiphany for me.
Right.
That the guy I was sticking up for got mad at me.
Yeah.
For sticking up for him, essentially. So this was all happening, and then of course Obama did get elected, and that was a great moment. But you know, there was a lot of things that happened along the way. My biggest beef when I was in America was that I felt a lot of complacency with people.
Right.
And that irked me, and that added fuel to my fire of wanting to make this statement, wanting to make this film. And then I headed down to South America, and other sets of issues occurred.
What happened?
You know, there's a lot of corruption and a lot of poverty, and you know, there are not favelas only in Rio, they're
Right.
everywhere.
They're everywhere.
And we were in places like Medellin, and you know, we were driving in cars that were very heavy and very slow, and I'd say, why is this car so heavy and slow? And they're like, guess it's a bomb-proof car. And I said, why are we driving in a bomb-proof car? And it's like, because you're a public figure, and you know, everyone has guns here and bombs. And so then that became, you know, the sort of everywhere we went, bomb-proof cars. It's like the dial got turned up everywhere. Everything,
Right.
every place became more intolerant, more dangerous, more scary. The stakes were higher.
Yeah.
There were more padlocks on everything.
Right.
There were more passes and tags and checkpoints. And
Right.
in fact, everywhere we went, I had that feeling.
Yeah. You've sort of seen the world
I just
fall
felt like the
apart.
world was collapsing.
Yeah.
And the freedom of artists to express themselves was collapsing. And our inability to treat one another as human beings was collapsing. And here I was traveling around the world as an artist, expressing myself, trying to bring people together through music, with joy, dancing, etc. Now, cut to Stephen Klein and a camera crew, because Stephen was supposed to come into Buenos Aires,
Right.
and we were supposed to do an ad campaign for shoes and lingerie. Okay?
Okay.
Did you know this story?
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, it turns out that this lingerie that I designed and these shoes that I designed were too edgy, cutting edge for the company that wanted to release them. It was supposed to be called Truth or Dare, and I was asked to do a line of lingerie. Now, if you ask me to do a line of lingerie and you call it Truth or Dare,
What do you think you're gonna get?
yeah, it's going to be edgy, it's going to be provocative, it's not going to be JCPenney or even Victoria's Secret. So we were going to shoot this whole ad campaign for this line that I developed and I'd been working on through the course of the year. Well, I was told when we got to Buenos Aires that it was not acceptable, that
The gig is off.
the gig is off. So I was outraged, okay? Outraged. But I had a crew, and I had Stephen, and I had to do something, and I had all of this fire inside of me and so
fight.
much to say and fight about everything that I had witnessed. So I said, we're shooting something anyway. I was already going to use my dancers. If you watch the movie, you're going to see the lingerie I designed, okay?
It's in the film.
It's in the film, yeah.
Fantastic.
So then I had my dancers, and
Yeah.
I had the clothes,
Yeah.
and we had the set, and we had this crew, and I said, Stephen, we're going to shoot something anyways. He said, what are we going to shoot? This is when the idea came into my head about artists expressing themselves, but I'm going to use the dancers,
Right.
and we're going to use dance as a metaphor.
Right.
So we let all the dancers come in, and we had them all take turns improvising their kind of dance about their kind of struggle. And a lot of them have turned to dance as a way out of their oppression,
Situation
their
and
situation,
yeah.
whatever. And so I wanted to take that opportunity to allow them to use that, okay?
Right.
So we started filming them in that environment.
Just improvising.
Yes.
Go and you
I would
brief
direct
them.
them, I
and
would
you
brief
said,
them, I would say, you're fighting, you're this is in your head, this is what's going on.
Right.
And then I would have my moments, I would improvise, where I would come in,
Mm-hmm.
and because I had a whole idea in my mind, because I was pissed off about,
Mm-hmm.
the death of an artist, the death of creativity, and how branding has become so important, more important than everything. So for me, the gun represents that,
Right.
branding.
And so how did it evolve from there then? You were in this hot moment in Buenos Aires, you decide to use the dancers and Stephen and the set to begin this thing, and then
this
how
journey.
did
and then we found these interrogation rooms, and then I decided to make some of the dancers prisoners that were being treated like terrorists and beaten for no reason and tortured for no reason. I had been inspired by the night porter, by that scene where basically all the Nazis are standing around a room, and you know during that time they allowed certain people to stay alive because they entertained everyone,
right,
as you know. So
yep.
if you could play the violin, or you were a good boxer, or you were an incredible dancer, you could live as long as you kept entertaining everybody.
Yeah.
So Chaz became this artist, this figure who was dancing for his life.
Right.
While all of these very narrow-minded, judgmental, macho men were kind of standing around watching him, his naked white ass, you know, like kind of intrigued and amazed and repulsed all at the same time. So that's how it all began. And it was all free flow, stream of consciousness. Now we're going to do this, now we're going to do that, now we're going to do this. I wasn't thinking, I was feeling, I was doing.
How exciting was that?
It was great because everyone tuned in to me and knew what I was saying, and they were on my ride with me, and they didn't ask one question, they just did it. And Stephen was with me too, he just filmed it. And he let me speak to everybody and say what to do, what to do, what to do. You do this, you do that. So none of the narration was written, none of what you hear me say, the writing had been done until I got all that footage. The tour ended, I collapsed in a heap, it took a couple weeks to recuperate, and then came back and sat with my editor and looked at all the footage with Steve and saw what we had. Put that together, a rough cut of it, and then I realized what I had to write.
Right.
And then I started writing my manifesto about freedom of expression and the rights of an artist, the rights of human beings. And then I realized that I had to keep filming, and that's when I created the second part of the film.
Yeah, there's two narratives in the film. One is the Baroque dancers, and the other one is you getting oppressed in the sort of dungeons.
I don't think there's two narratives, there's two
worlds.
Two worlds.
Two worlds.
Two worlds, one point of view. And so then we created the jail, the prison, where I am incarcerated for having that point of view that I had, that we filmed previously in the Baroque room. And that was a metaphor for the artist being locked up, the human being locked up, the soul being sentenced, the soulfulness of all human beings being oppressed, the rights of all human beings. I can't separate, as I said, the rights of an artist and the rights of a human being, because to me they're one. So that was the second part of the filming, and I had written 3/4 of the narration by the time we filmed it. Then I wrote more once we filmed that, and then I decided to use some of my speeches that I'd made along the way in certain cities where crazy things were happening. I can't remember where they were all from, but they were always me imploring people to talk about this revolution that I wanted to start. So basically that's how it all came together, and I hope that I've given you some kind of an idea.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
How it began.
Yeah, now that it exists and it lives, what's your hope with it? What do you want to do with the film, and what do you hope the film accomplishes?
Well, first of all, I want to wake people up to a situation that, you know, maybe a lot of people already know exists. Certainly you know it exists. You're in the world of uncovering all the cover-ups, and you're in the world of picking up rocks and letting all the bugs come out and educating people and letting people know what's going on. And my job has always been about fighting for freedom. I consider myself a freedom fighter, so what do I want to accomplish? I want to encourage other people to stand up for their rights. I want to encourage other people to tell their stories. I want to tell other people, let other people know that there are people that will fight for them, that are in their corner, that I want to
You'll fight for them.
I'll fight for them. I want to give those people a voice. I want to give all people who are being persecuted and oppressed a voice.
How far are you willing to go?
As far as I have to go. As far as I have to go. That's how far I'm willing to go.
This is the most important thing in your life right now.
Yes, it is. It absolutely is. That and the education and livelihood of my children. the most important thing in my life.
So you're in this for real?
Yes, yes I am. I want to invite other artists to make their own statements about what freedom means to them in any way, shape, or form they feel inspired to do so. I want to bring people's attention to people who have been marginalized, people who are being persecuted at this very moment in time. I want to fight for people. I want to fight for people's rights. I don't think a lot of artists feel like they have the freedom to express themselves anymore, to have an opinion, to speak out openly. You know, perhaps there's a handful who really are willing to fight for what they believe in, who really are willing to be unpopular for what they believe in, who really don't care about approval.
Do you think you're going to be the first personality to make a move like this, and that some other people might join you?
I hope so. That's my wish. Maybe I'm being too idealistic to have that kind of a dream, to think that I could start this movement, this revolution, but I really feel it's necessary after what I've been through, after what I've witnessed, after what I've seen other people suffer and witness. You know, you think we're a civilization that's moving forward, but I'm sorry, my friend, we are not. We are going backwards. And the internet is giving us the illusion that we're coming closer together, but...
Why is that?
Well, because we can instantly connect to people all around the world, so we have the illusion that we're getting closer to each other, but we're not, because we're becoming more intolerant.
But it's definitely a civilization which is more connected than it's ever been before. You just don't feel
yeah, but the consciousness of the people is not growing.
They're sharing their baby photos.
We're sharing information. We're becoming instantly famous. We haven't earned that fame. We haven't worked for it. We're just pressing a button. But our consciousness is not evolving. That is the root of the problem.
Right. You described this to me in one of our other meetings as a revolution of love, or an effort to make the world feel, an emotional revolution.
Yeah.
Is it because we've lost the ability to feel deeply?
I think that we see so much, we're exposed to so much. I see it even with my own children. They see everything, they know everything now. They've lost their innocence. We have become desensitized to so many things, desensitized to violence. My children can't tell the difference half the time between, you know, a Vice newscast, you know, journalistic piece and an action movie. It's like the line has been blurred inexorably. And most people are apathetic, they don't want to, or they can't feel empathy, or they don't want to do anything about it, or they don't think they have a chance to do anything about it. What's my small voice going to do? What's my small action going to do? What could I possibly do to change this scenario, this situation? And I'm saying you can, and that's how we change. Drop by drop, inch by inch, one person adding up with another person. It is a fight that can be fought and won, but you know, a revolution has to happen, and we need role models, and we need people who are brave, and we need people to bring people together.
And fight.
And fight, yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for fighting for so long, and thank you for making this film and putting it out into the world.
My pleasure, and my pain.